the meeting officially underway. Our chairman is not here. Our vice chair is expected to be out this evening, and so before we can move forward officially, we need to, as we did in the last meeting, if you recall, take a nomination for tonight's acting chair, go through that process, and once the acting chair is identified, he or she can then take the center stage and call the matter forward and do the pledge, et cetera. So with that, I would call for a motion for tonight's acting chair.
I would like to move that Phil Lantry act as our acting chair this evening.
Second.
Now, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Mr. Lantry, you are the chair. You have the floor, sir.
Should I move?
Yeah, that'd probably be
Can we move?
good. Then you can officially,
Can we move down a little bit too?
yes, you can, of
Okay.
course. Take your name tag. Mr. Chair.
Oh, man, the TV's out.
All right, call this meeting to order. Everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. I believe the first order of business is to approve our minutes.
Take roll.
Oh, yeah, okay, take roll.
Sure.
So we'll take roll call first.
Vice Chair Carney and Member Rivera will have an excused absence for the record. Chair Oquendo will have an unexcused absence for the record. Member Lantry.
Present.
Member Grigsby.
Present.
Member Wolfer.
Present.
And you'll be a voting member this evening. Member Douglas.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, we would vote on the minutes from last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? So pass 4-0. Thank you. Okay.
All right. First order of new business is the resolution number 2022-184R, Hathaway Multifamily Conditional Use, DRC case number CNU 22-00001. And staff, could you please present the case? Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Tisha Manning, Associate Planner in Community Development, and I will be presenting for you tonight the Hathaway Multifamily Conditional Use case. It is approximately 41.67 acres located north of Orlo Bronson Memorial Highway, south of Lillian Lee Road, east of Narcoossee Road, and west of Nora Tyson. It is for approval of a conditional use for a multifamily. The current zoning is highway business, the future land use is commercial, and the proposed use is an apartment complex in highway business, which requires a conditional use approval. The facilities do not present any adverse impact on city facilities. Here you'll see the zoning map of where the 41.67 acres of the property is located. This conditional use is actually going to be to the northern part of that property, and it's going to leave the front half still commercial. The zoning, again, is highway business, and you'll see on the zoning map that there is some residential surrounded to the northern portion and some commercial to the front. This is just a general concept site plan of how it's going to be laid out. And you'll see there where, again, the multifamily residential is at the northern portion of the property with the remaining 16.18 acres. Commercial is still going to stay abutting up against Orlo Bronson. This is a more detailed site plan of the property. It's about 300 units that they're planning to locate on that property. That's going to have a fitness center, a clubhouse, as well as a pool. And it's going to, we have some conditions on the property as well. So some of the conditions for the conditional use that staff has imposed is that we have a hardscape fence along the west and the northern portion of the property that's going to butt up against residential, that the applicant needs to do an improvement on Puffin Road. It is in alignment with our strategic plan goals of growth management. And staff does recommend approval of this resolution 2022-184R. And likewise, we ask the same of the Planning Commission. I'm available if you have any further questions, as well as the applicant is available.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Would you like to speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commission. Sean Hendel with Hanson Walter and Associates, 8 Broadway, Suite 104, Kissimmee, Florida, 34741. Representing the applicant, and I'm available to address any questions you or the public may have.
Thank you. Planning Commission, does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. What is the planned access into the area? Is it from Orlo Bronson?
Yes, ma'am. So we've worked out with the property on the south side of 192, a joint access where there's an existing median opening with left turn lanes that are already built. We'll be signalizing that intersection with the property to the south, coordinating that with DOT right now. And then we're going to extend Puffin Drive along our entire east boundary down to 192 to that intersection. So the access to the property will be through Puffin Drive. Some of the commercial in the future would potentially have right-ins and right-outs on 192 as well, but the main access is going to be off the extension of Puffin Drive.
And you said a signal's going to be added?
That's what's in the plans right now. DOT has preliminarily approved the signal location. We're still going through final approvals through traffic up in DeLand. But once we finish with that and the adjacent property to the south, the warrants have been met. So we just, obviously it's a state road and they have to approve that.
Okay.
But we are planning on putting a signal in at this point, yes.
So
Is
it's
that-
all apartments and 300, was it 300 units?
Yeah, so it's 3-story walk-ups. You can see on the concept plan, we put the ponds and buffers to the residential areas, and we've moved everything back away and internal to our property. So then the units themselves won't be adjacent to any of the residential. It'll be adjacent to our internal property and the commercial to the front. And then we're making it walkable to where the commercial and the multifamily can be interactive. So we'll have walking access to the commercial areas as well as Puffin Drive and the roadways.
Can I just ask a question going back to the traffic? I believe that right across the street on the other side of 192 is another development going in, a residential property, correct? Right across?
I'm not sure what their development is.
D.L. Horton, Thompson
There's-
Grove is going in. And then there's also a proposed light at Nova Road. How
Yes.
how does that fit in? I mean, that seems like an awful lot of big intersections in a very short amount of time. Has that intersection been considered with this as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to have a half-mile separation between full median openings and signals. This, at the current location, meets a half-mile from Narcousie Road. It's a little bit more than a half-mile over to Nova Road. Nova Road's a push-button program that DOT is putting in conjunction with the county.
Okay.
And that project is already designed and in process. We're actually designing a project at that intersection as well. And we've been working with them, and we're extending the utilities and made sure that we missed all the future signal poles.
And then this, has there been any kind of study on the impact on schools in the area? Is this going to feed into the new high school that's coming on Pine Grove, or where, Are you anticipating that the charter school there will absorb some of this?
So the school system and the school district, they handle that on our behalf. So they have the ability to rezone or to provide schools, additional schools will pay full impacts that cover those costs. Right now, the school district has not asked for anything besides just payment of those fees.
Okay, thank you.
Can I do a follow-up to that? Do we have any information, Tisha, on what the schools are saying? Because as I'm hearing from a lot of schools already this year, there's huge overpopulation of schools. So I'd be really curious when we add all of those apartments in there.
Yes, so I did just look it up, and so the school impact is what I was looking up right now, so that I can give you that information. So give me one moment, let me pull that information up for you, and then I'll be able to answer your question, okay?
Thank you.
Also, to address the schools, for the last 15 or 17 years, I sit on the Business Advisory Board for the school district. Right now, collections, both sales tax and impact fees are way over our projected budgets. So over the next 5 years, they've just redid their capital program, and we have, I think, a little over $500 million in schools being constructed in the next 5 years. And some of them are in this area.
But that will be done after this is built. I'm worried about the immediate impact on the schools or, classroom. I have a seventh grader who the schools are bursting at the seams. This is a concern of mine that I think we need to see the numbers on.
No problem.
Do you have any idea what the target price range is for these apartments at this time, or?
They're market rate apartments.
Okay.
What's the market rate?
It's a
Guess that's
valid
subjective.
question. I mean,
Market rate, estimating rental,
is it 2,000
one
for a
one-bedroom
one-bedroom? Like,
apartments,
what are we looking at?
two-bedroom apartments?
Let me check with my client, but again, it really depends on what the construction costs are. So when they actually do the construction and what those construction costs are, that'll establish the final budget for the
When's the
for the
timing
rentals.
breaking ground, you think?
They would like to break ground soon, but it's probably going to be at the end
So
of
it
the year.
seems like we got a
first
lot of
the next year.
questions here.
I do have a question. This probably would be for city staff, but it is similar to what your question was about Puffin Drive. Where that would exit onto 192, how does that compare with the planned entrance exit into the subdivision across the street? Would it be directly across where you could cross from one to the other? Or do we know that yet? Or, I mean, I don't have the previous plan in front of me for that.
Okay,
That
so let me
subdivision.
answer Member Grigsby's question first.
Yes, please.
The school impact study, we do send it out to the school to comment, and they said that they would take a closer look at site development plan. So the school didn't provide any comment. Okay? And to answer your question, I'm going to digress to the planning manager.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dagmar Segarra, Planning Manager. And just to add to what Tisha said about the school district, because the request is for a conditional use, we're not actually approving the apartments right now. We're just approving the use. So at the time of the site plan for the apartments, then that evaluation is going to be conducted by the school, and they're going to do the capacity report, which will, that's what's going to determine what kind of impact it's going to have into the area schools. But I would like to also add that I believe that with the construction of the Center Lake Ranch and the construction of Rome Bridge, there is 4 schools are being proposed total overall. So we anticipate that some of the students from this particular use will be attending to those 4. Oh, but I said that it's at the disclaimer, it's at the discretion of the school board where they get assigned. In regards to the access, so 192 is an FDOT, so we have not much control of the access directly into 192. City staff is making all of the coordination with properties along each side, creating those connections. Right now, we have a development across the street next to the Tyson Reserve that is going to be a commercial development that is going to be creating that connection from Tyson Reserve to Live Oak. So we are working to create the network and keep it away from 1792, and so people can have other access. I mean, not 1792, 192, 192, so people have other access means of transport, getting around. But unfortunately, 192, we don't have, it's not a city-owned road.
Dagmar, educate me a little more. If we change conditional use, we're changing to multifamily residential from highway business.
It's a,
No.
it's a,
Application, conditional use for multifamily residential use in a highway business zoning district.
That's correct.
Okay.
The zoning is not going to change.
It's the
It's
sti-
just allowing the additional use of multifamily in the highway business.
Okay, all right, so if, in fact, this didn't get approved or something happened, and say a Home Depot, which is really needed on that end of town, came in and something happened, they would still be able to use that property for highway business or something?
Yes, if it's an
Okay.
allowable use under the highway business and does not require any conditional uses, yes.
Okay,
Is there any restrictions on the residential, like height restrictions, level restrictions, if this is a conditional use?
To the rest, you mean to the multifamily?
Yeah.
To
yeah.
yeah, because it is a conditional use, as we discussed in the previous meeting that we had with the food trucks. We can add conditions to the conditional use. And that pertains, that's why we are not really approving a concept, the apartment layout concept plan. This is just for informational purpose, and that's why the conditional uses are not attached to the concept plan. So if the concept plan changes, those conditional use will will remain. And we can, you can add conditions in addition to the staff recommendation conditions as well.
if I can, members of the commission, in the report, I'm sure you've all been through it, there are 7 recommended conditions that the staff is suggesting if the commission were of the mind to approve the conditional use as proposed. If a conditional use is achieved and any of the conditions or any type of parameters that are imposed by city council after the planning commission's recommendations are not met or go out of compliance, if you will, then code enforcement can get involved from an enforcement standpoint to enforce the property owner to adhere to the conditional use. So there's consequence if you're not abiding by the conditions that are in place with a conditional use.
Okay.
And as I always say, the factors that are in the report are really the guideposts for the commission. Those all have to be considered and essentially posed to yourselves in the form of a question and answered in the affirmative if the commission is of the mind to recommend approval. And then whatever conditions the commission felt are appropriate, if the commission wishes for conditions. Staff obviously has several that they've enumerated, so.
Are there any, is the developer floating around any ideas about what commercial is going to go in front of those apartments? Like, is it another strip mall? Is it restaurants? Like, what is commercial in?
Well, they're getting a lot of interest, I can tell you that. It is for some restaurants, and they've also had a grocery as somebody that's looked into that 18 acres. So it is getting a lot of interest. Once I think the signal is approved, at that point, they'll make decisions for the best place to put everything and who they should sell to.
Okay.
But we'll come back to you with the revised plat to create the lots for that development once we know the sizes and what's going in there. Your question on the market rate, so market rates what the apartments in the area rent for. These apartments will be between 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, and the rate should be somewhere between $1,700 and $2,000 based on what the current market is.
Okay.
And I will tell you that the school district just put out the design for the high school on Nova Road. So that'll be the next school that'll be built in this immediate area. That design went out about a month ago.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Any other questions for the applicant? All right, at this time, we will go on to public comment session. And to speak on this resolution is last name incorrect. Malakowitz. Did I say it right? Malakowitz?
Is it okay if I go first, Andrew Campbell?
Yes, Andrew Campbell, you may go first. I have your form here. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Andrew Campbell, 1825 Puffin Road. First and foremost, I'd like to ask why I wasn't notified. Typically, I'm notified when new developments occur in the general vicinity. I didn't receive any notification. And if my neighbor didn't find out from a friend at a neighboring community, we would have never known about this meeting. Would have never known that this was even being proposed.
Question.
I'd love to know why that didn't occur
If I
this
could,
time.
Mr. Chairman, and for the public comment, obviously comments are all appreciated. That would be an issue for staff to address, and they'll have an opportunity to address that here this evening. The commission's here to take your feedback. The commission is not here to provide answers to questions such as that, but they are here as the body to take all the feedback and then make their collective decision after, or recommendation, as it were, after they've received all the feedback. So with that,
Understood.
staff may have a chance to respond to that point at some point, Mr. Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Since I live on Puffin Road and have for 19 years,
That's fine.
I would request that at least our section of Puffin Road stay as is. Right now, the sign that's at the end of my property that is at the corner of Puffin and Lillian Lee states a dead end. I didn't put that up. Apparently, the city put it up. So I would just request that it stays that way, at least on our end. If you deem that it needs to change for some reason, I would ask that there be no egress and ingress on Puffin Road for this property. And if so, can they gate it for just emergency vehicles? That would kind of be something I would request. Also, if they work on Puffin Road, which I'm sure they're going to have to, seeing what they're proposing, how am I getting in and out of my property? It's my only entrance to my property. So when St. Cloud decided to do the roads from dirt, what they've supplied us with, there was several days that I wasn't able to access the property. So I'd be interested to know how that's going to take place as well. So that's kind of all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Chrissy Malakowitz.
Thank you. My name is Chrissy Malukowitz, and I reside at 1820 Puffin Road, St. Cloud, Florida, 34771. I live right across from Andy Campbell, and between the Campbells and myself, we have 8 acres. And as you all know, there's very few rural land left. We treasure it. We very much appreciate being where we are today, especially with all the growth happening. Strongly second the motion to keep Puffin Road exactly how it is today, and if deemed, to have just an emergency access. And that is exactly how it is today, also with Canopy Walk, which is adjacent to where Puffin Road is as well. I am also here to request that you consider zoning the property to single family versus multifamily. Apartments and townhomes are not compatible with the existing community. Bringing in apartments or townhomes will dramatically decrease the value of our home and our land. Additionally, this property is within the Narcousie overlay, which restricts more than 3 stories, and I did hear him say that it was 3 stories, but that's something to take into consideration, that Narcousie overlay. My primary concern is to preserve the privacy of the current homeowners and to retain what little is left in our rural environment. And I would like to ask, am I allowed to ask the developer any questions?
This is not the forum for that. You can certainly have any discussions with the developer at any time. Tonight's forum is for the commission to take
Okay.
the public feedback and then contemplate the application and take staff direction as well.
Understood. And then lastly, I would like to also state that just like Ms. Wolfer, I have a child in school, a 9th grader and a 7th grader, and my 9th grader has 74 kids in his class, in one of his classes. The schools today are overpopulated. This gentleman stated he wanted to start doing, this happen as soon as possible. My concern is today, not in a year, not 2 years, but today. What are we doing today? What he wants to do is going to overload the schools even more. And it's scary to know that the school board didn't even respond. And that concludes my concerns. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on this resolution while we are still in the public comment portion?
Wait a second.
Yeah,
Is there,
that's acceptable.
okay.
Sean Hendel, Hanson Walton Associates. I'm not the developer, so I'm sorry. I'm an engineer, so my company is representing them. The Puffin Road extension, that was a request of the City of St. Cloud Transportation Division. We're not planning any improvements along Puffin Road adjacent to their homes. We're simply paving it and extending it on our property to the end of our property per their direction. If they want to limit that access, if the city wants to limit that, if you guys want to put a condition to limit that access, we don't have any concern with that. That's up to y'all. We're just doing what the city asked us to do. They wanted that intersection to be signalized, and they wanted that road extended the length of our property. So we're providing all of the right-of-way. They mentioned the property that's developed across the street from them or to the east of them, which is to the north of Rockbrook Minis. That property dedicated a portion of right-of-way along Puffin Road, not the entire 50 feet. We're developing and providing the entire 50 feet at the request of the city. So our access is going to be off the paved section from 192 to the apartments. And as far as going north, we don't really have any need or desire to do that. It was interesting, a couple of the comments that Home Depot may be needed, I believe Ms. Grigsby said. That's a very intense use. So I design and develop Home Depots, as my company does.
Could bring some more into St. Cloud.
And they definitely are very intense. They're all night long deliveries. They have back of the house, they have loadings and unloadings. And that's, to me, is not compatible until our developer that's purchasing this land. It's not compatible to the residential that's to the north and to the west of him.
Just to be clear, I was not suggesting it. It was
Okay.
just to make sure that
So-
conditional use didn't mean only one thing, so,
Yes.
yes.
So we tried to be cognizant of what we've been hearing from the city council as well. So when the city council was a property just to the north of this, on the north side of Lillian Lee, came in along Narcousie Road, and they were going to put 4-story apartments along that property in Narcousie. The council said that if you do apartments, in their opinion, they should be on 192. And we would prefer that you do a 3-story product instead of a 4-story. The fire department wasn't as excited about the 3-story because the 4-story includes fire sprinklers, it includes elevators. It's a different product. So it has a different fire rating and different safety rating. The developer adhered to that, and they made their product a 3-story walk-up product. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, and that's what we're trying to put. It's definitely, under highway business, it's much less intense. If you, in your land development code, you have permitted uses and conditional uses. This is a conditional use. We could have rezoned the property. Because it was a condition within that existing zoning, it just made more sense to request a conditional use. That gives you the opportunity to, and staff the opportunity to put conditions on the development that straight zoning would not allow you to do. So we're fine with conditions as long as, in the conditions that have been recommended to date from staff, we are in agreement with. So if there's anything else that you think that should be as far as with some of the things that they've brought up, we'd be happy to consider those, and we can go from there.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to remind the commission is acting in an advisory position and making a recommendation to the council. This is going to be addressed and heard by the council, as I understand, on September the 8th. So anyone in the audience that is obviously interested in these issues or this case should be aware of that as well, that September 8th, it's on schedule to be addressed by the city council.
Thank you for providing that information. At this time, I would like to close the public comment session and ask the board if they have any other questions for.
Just a question about the overlay, which I vaguely remember and understand about the overlay of Narcousie overlay. So could you just touch on that? And I think it was very interesting, the 3-story versus the 4-story and safety and things like that. So the overlay is an interesting.
Yes, what's your
addition.
question, Member Griswold?
The question is that as the resident was mentioning, that the 3 stories would not be allowable because of the overlay?
So the Narcousie overlay does have specific guideline requirements that would be examined at site development time to see, because they have issues depending on where you're located within the Narcousie overlay, as far as how the exterior of the building has to look, what type of fencing. So they're very specific in their design standards based upon what part of the Narcousie overlay your actual development is within.
I have a question, and maybe you can answer this, maybe Dagmar will need to, I don't know, but the question came up about why Puffin Road chose to be improved to allow for access. I can make assumptions, and my assumption would be to allow more flexibility for the remaining property, but could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So for clarification, Puffin Road is a county road, and it's part of the framework work from the county. It connects to Lillian Lee and Nora Tyson. So as a recommendation from staff, because it connects to the framework streets, Nora and Lillian Lee, that is why the recommendation for the improvement to connect to 192 with Puffin Road. The improvement of Puffin Road beyond the request by the applicant will be determined by the county. So the city doesn't really have a say if the road is going to be maintained a road. It is staff, we strongly, because the area is an area that has been identified as an urban area in the future development. That's why we're trying to plan for future right-of-ways and for future connectivity. And that's why the dedication of right-of-way along the east side of the property, connecting to 92, connecting to the north side of the property, is for the future improvement of Puffin Road and that possible extension coming from, I believe, Lillian Lee, I believe. And it will have to be improved by county standards. So that's our recommendation, because and the only improvement of a right-of-way is not in compliance with our land development code and the comprehensive policies of the city, which is encouraging the connectivity and development of right-of-ways.
But can Puffin Road be designated just as emergency access, as they mentioned earlier, even if it's improved like that, or it cannot?
Because it's a county road,
We
cannot.
we can't use it even as a condition in what we're recommending?
The county will have to agree.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, because it's a connector to two framework
two.
streets, it is anticipated to have a connection to 192.
So it
the
wouldn't
public
be
connection.
necessary, or if we were to move to try and approve this, to add that in as a recommendation to the council would be moot.
Because-
That overreaches the scope of
Okay,
what the
that's what I'm
commission.
saying. It would be
and the-
moot
and
not
the-
to add on.
the-
Okay.
The conditions have to be tied to the
City or
applicant
power.
and to the applicant, the property owner, and to what they can control.
Right.
Within the property that they're seeking this use for.
Right, gotcha.
And the site development plan for the apartments, when it comes in, it gets reviewed by Osceola County. So they will make comments if there was a proposed emergency access.
Okay.
Thank you. I do want to state that, I have seen a lot of applications, both through this board and to the city council, for different apartments, and usually they don't really fit the area. In my opinion, this one fits the area better than others that we've seen, simply because of the location along 182, and of course, that it's already in sort of a highway business district. Sure that many people that live around that area would disagree, but that's just my opinion. Does anybody else want to discuss anything or have any other questions for the staff or the applicant?
Well, just one more comment, and I know that sometimes the public might not see some of the conditions, but I think the staff made some nice conditions that do hopefully protect with the 6-foot wall, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's admirable.
Can the council please read those conditions into the record, along with your motion?
All of them?
Yes, please.
And one more
Yes,
thing,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, I apologize, but one more thing. If it is the pleasure of the board, you can impose further conditions in regards to the improvement of the road or further examination of the road during the site development plan. So if it would determine further improvements of Puffin Road greater than what the what is required by the development code and the TIA, the transportation impact analysis, then you can add conditions in regards to that allows staff further examination of that connection.
Yeah, I would just, again, reiterate that the conditions have to be tied to the control of the applicant, the
Right.
property owner. That's because this is a conditional use that the property owner will be, figuratively speaking, living with and having to stay within compliance of any conditions that are tied to the use.
But as Dagmaria says, they can at least examine it so that it's, a condition of examination, or not really?
Well, the Land Development Code gives the commission and the council the leeway to impose appropriate conditions and safeguards.
only if we can.
And that's a fairly broad sweeping statement. But I only state that whatever conditions, if there are any in addition to the 7 that are proposed by way of discussion, that they keep in mind, they need to be conditions tied to the applicant.
Right.
It can't
That's
be,
why I said
it can't be outcome focused. It has to be tied to what's within the control of the applicant, the property owner, because they're the being that has to comply.
But Puffin Road is the only access in and out of this community at this time, correct? We're not,
That's a question for staff.
Oh, I thought it was,
And
because there's no,
Yes, so let me go back to the concept plan. So right now, yes, the applicant is proposing to use 192 up Puffin to access their property.
so for clarification, you have to turn on Puffin to get into the community. There is no access directly from 192, correct?
No, because this
Okay.
is at the
Yeah.
northern
I
portion
was just,
of the
the
property.
way you phrased it, it made it sound like there was both. So I'm just clarifying that.
Yes.
So we're discussing a county road that has to be used for access, but we're not able to make an impact on that because it's county.
yes, I have to say, I misunderstood that too. I thought they were coming off of 192.
Right. And as we don't know what commercial is going in there right now, if there is any access, it doesn't look like there would be any way to build any access in from 192 either. But
Well, I think they could still have access from 192. I think what would preclude that would be,
they'd have to build a road by the parking lot.
yeah, because the applicant or the representative for the applicant had stated a possible right in, right out for the commercial portion, correct?
Yes, let me let the applicant speak, but I just want to remind you guys that this is built on the northern portion of the property. So prior to any development going into the front portion that's going to be developed as commercial, that's going to be reviewed separately. So for an access from 192 directly into this multifamily at this time is not the way you're going to be able to access that multifamily.
But they would be, but on Puffin Road, as these folks are saying, would they be able to go out Puffin Road to Lillian Lee to get out to, say, Narcousie Road?
Well, right now Lillian Lee is a dead-end road.
Oh,
So,
Puffin
No.
doesn't access Lillian Lee?
You can access.
oh no, yeah, Lily,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Puffin, it deads in, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we come off of 192 onto Puffin, but then to get out of the apartment complex, where they would only be able to turn right and go back out onto 192, they wouldn't be able to go out past the residence onto Lillian Lee to go out to Narcousie, would they?
Correct, it dead ends right here.
Okay, so they would never go down there unless they were going to visit these folks.
Correct.
Unless the county decided.
I think that a little misleading there. So if we connect to our north property line, the right-of-way for Puffin Road dead ends into our north property line. So if you don't put a control on it, or if we don't build that section until Puffin is ready to be developed, or they improve the roadway to urban standards, then that connection could occur. So we don't have a problem either way.
Got it.
You mentioned the right-in, right-out to 192. So as we develop our commercial portion, I told you that this development is going to be intermingled. So we're going to try to make it very walkable. We're going to try to make it to where people don't have to get in their cars, but they have their ability to get into a car. So when we're developing the commercial portion, we can obviously set up the site where we could have a second access into the apartments. We have 2 on Puffin right now, but we have the ability to create an entrance through the commercial area that makes it more inviting and more usable for the residents. And that also would give other residents the ability to get into the commercial without getting in their car. So there'll be sidewalks along Puffin, there'll be sidewalks from our apartment complex directly into the commercial area. Potentially there could be access, vehicular access, a second one on 192 as you develop the commercial area. We just need to figure out how the commercial's working and how we plan that to make that functional and safe. Because as a right-in, right-out, if you don't have a destination to go past that signalized intersection, to go to a right turn lane where the signalized intersection takes you there anyways, you won't get a lot of trips through that way. But if you have a commercial use, or maybe the units on the west end of the apartment complex, they would have a second access. A lot of times for apartments, for safety, for the residents that live in apartments, they try to limit the number of access points and control it. So you have to go past the main clubhouse, you have to go through gates or through security cameras. So also limiting that, we try to limit for the residents a safer situation, that they could have a gated community. And I think the northern access is emergency access only, so that is gated. So the northern access on Puffin Drive. But we're not opposed, and when we develop the commercial, to look at all options to make sure that those developments intermingle. We want it to be seamless, to where people don't have to get in your car to go to a restaurant or to go to another part of the development.
And just to clarify, right now, we're only looking at the conditional use of part of this property for the use of apartments. We're not approving any sort of site plan or development plan.
Correct.
Or anything like that at this time.
And just for a point of clarification, the improvement, the new improvement of Puffin Road, not the existing Puffin Road, the new improvement of the Puffin Road, it is going to be maintained by the city. Because that is the new improvement that is going to be within the city limits, and it's already, the property is already annexed into the city. So that is going to be maintained by the city. In regards to the connection from the multifamily and the commercial, staff does not have any, the staff encourage the connection between the two developments, and we would not be opposed if you would like to add an additional condition, saying that at the time of the development of the site plan, a connection needs to be made to the commercial site.
This time, I would like to call for a motion, or would anybody like to add any conditions to a motion?
Yes. When I'm coming, I just got to write it down.
If the commission, there was a request that, from, I think, staff, that the conditions that the staff proposed be read into the record. I'm happy to do that for you all to then add, subtract, or
I got
embellish,
this.
if you will. You want to do it? Go right
I'm
ahead.
ready-
Perfect.
I'm ready to go.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
All right.
Wonderful.
I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of resolution number 2022-184R, based on the 6 factual matters within the Land Development Code, along with the conditions recommended by staff of the requested condition for the northern portion of the parcel in which the residential use is proposed, and more specifically in accordance with the legal description provided in resolution number 2022-184R. The northern 25.23 acres of the subject property must be split or subdivided prior to the approval of the site development plan. The subdivision of the property into more than 2 lots will require platting. The city will not recognize any property split done outside the city's lot split process. The site development plan must include dedication of right-of-way for the future improvement of Puffin Road along the east side of the property boundary. The applicant must provide a 6-foot wall in addition to the required medium landscape buffer along the northern and west property boundaries abutting the residential properties. The approval of the requested conditional use does not constitute the approval of the provided concept plan as a site plan. The development will require the approval of a site development plan and any additional approvals required by the Land Development Code. And on behalf of the council, I'd like to also add the condition that at the time of site plan development, that a connection between the commercial and residential portion be considered. The end.
Well,
Oh, maybe.
before it's seconded or discussed, to be considered is difficult to
All right.
identify as to whether or not the condition's been met.
Oh, at the time, okay,
so
so
I
the
think you
connection
should-
Should say
between
required, I think.
required. Thank you.
I second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it's 3-1, motion passes 3-1. So that recommendation will go to city council and will be addressed by the council on September the 8th.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, if I could just request that the developer and I'll at least reach out to the residents, and if staff would make sure that the residents are being notified, we could follow up and see why they may or may not have gotten the notice. And make it your choice to talk to the developer. I mean, you're very free to do that.
I forgot to address that, if I may. Just for the record, staff sent notifications to the required 500-foot buffer, and we went beyond that with over 450 notices were sent out.
Okay. So they could have just possibly been in an area where that buffer or whatever was outside of. All right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's actually an extra 200 feet outside of what's required by the state, or?
That's correct.
Yeah, I thought so.
Development code.
Thank you.
Development code.
You can ask.
No, it's not, that's not for, the commission's here for the agenda items at this time. That case has been addressed, and so, Mr. Chairman, you can move on to the next case, sir.
Thank you. We will move on to the second resolution, which is resolution number 2022-196R, preferred multifamily conditional use, DRC case number CNU 22-00005.
Good evening, members of the board. Tisha Manning, Associate Planner for Community Development, presenting to you the conditional use for the preferred multifamily. It's approximately 25.6 acres located north of Neptune Road, east of Sergeant Graham Drive, west of Old Canoe Creek Road, and south of 13th Street. This is also a conditional use for multifamily. The current zoning is highway business. The future land use is commercial. The proposed use is an apartment complex, and the request for conditional use is because it is in a multifamily in a highway business district. There is no adverse impacts on city facilities. As you can see here, the future land use, it shows that the future land use is commercial. It is surrounded by commercial with high-density residential to the west. The current zoning is highway business. And this is a concept plan of how the site is going to be laid out with access. The strategic plan goals is meets the strategic plan goals of growth management. And staff did review this recommendation on or before 7/7/22. We recommend approval of Resolution 2022-196R. Likewise, we ask the same of the Planning Commission. I am available for any questions, as well as the applicant is available, and they also have a presentation for the council.
Thank you. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address?
Good evening. My name is Celia Thacker Dorn. I'm here with Nelson Mullins on behalf of the applicant. My address is 390 North Orange Avenue, Orlando, Florida 32801. We do have a presentation if staff would like to see it. It's going to be very similar to what you saw in staff's report. Otherwise, we are just available to answer questions about the project or about the conditional use and why we're seeking the conditional use.
I would be happy to see the presentation.
Me too.
How about the others? All right.
Our
Excellent.
engineer's going to provide that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a couple slides that are,
Yes, it should be connected to the PowerPoint.
Sir, if you could just
sure.
provide your name and your affiliation for the commission,
I
sir.
sure will, yeah.
Thank you.
My name is James S. Carr. I'm with the firm Carr and Associates. We're architects, land planners, and my background is in multi-family housing. I've designed 267,000 apartments throughout the United States in 37 states, and feel that I am more than capable of designing this project. The rendering before you is a concept of the apartments as you'd enter off of Neptune Road. What we've done is to provide a lot of open space. I'm going to go back for a second or ahead to the site plan. You can see when you enter off of Neptune Road, it would be to your left. You enter through a gated entry, and as you come through and past the first two buildings, you'll end up in a park-like setting. What we've done is to create a lot of open space and make it feel like you're entering a park. All of the units would face on to the park or some portion of it. As you proceed down the boulevard and through the park, you would come to a roundabout, and at the roundabout, in the building straight ahead would be where the clubhouse is located, in addition to apartment buildings. The swimming pool and amenities would be located on a lake, which would be developed at the rear of the property. There's a secondary entrance off of Sergeant Graham Road. As you can see, at the roundabout, you would go around the roundabout and then make a right at the third intersection, and that would take you out. That's an elevation of one of the buildings without a lot of the landscaping area. And that's back with the rendering showing the entrance, the landscaping, and the park. This community is within walking distance of a lot of retail, and it has good access to all of the major highways in the area. It's an ideal location for apartments, and we believe they'll do very well there. Did you have any questions?
Commission, do we have any questions for the
How
applicant?
how many units are we talking about?
368
And,
apartments.
okay, and now we know that's just down the road from Neptune Middle School, or, yeah, Neptune Middle School, and right behind the St. Cloud Police Department, right?
That's correct,
And
right.
there's an elementary school back there as well.
And then
Yeah,
elementary's
there
on the
is.
other
Yeah.
side, yeah, on the other side of the street.
Right.
So I'm assuming traffic impact stuff, we're waiting for all of that, because that's a nightmare right now.
Right, oh,
Yeah, please.
absolutely, yeah.
Yes, as part of the site development plan, there will be a full traffic analysis that is completed. This, there's already a light that is planned for Neptune Road and Sergeant Graham, so there is going to be some traffic control device there. And the idea is that as the road expansion happens, because we do know that Neptune Road is being expanded by the county, part of that expansion is going to include more sidewalks. It's going to make it walkable for the students to go to the elementary school that is right there, as well as the middle school, if that is where they're ultimately zoned by the school district. So what this development does is it allows for these families to be able to live, work, and play really without ever having to get into a car. They can walk to school. There's a Publix that is just around the corner that is walkable. There are banks. There are, the Home Depot is right there across the road.
Don't have any stuff.
It's all going to come back to Home Depot now.
I know.
So, as you can see, it really is it's really well positioned to provide that walkability, connectivity. The trail will go through there, the bike trail. So it's all accessible.
Do you know if on the current proposed conceptual site plan, there is an image of Neptune Road? Is that do you know if that's the proposed county widening of it, where it shows like basically a dual turn lane in the middle?
I'm not entirely sure. Again, this is just the concept plan. It's not the site plan.
Understood, yep.
So when the site plan is, that would certainly be part of it, because those plans for Neptune Road are in place. They are already being taken into account. Their design is done, is my understanding, so.
And do you know what the intended use is of, there's a very small area on the northwest side of Sergeant Graham Road. that's
Yes,
included in
that
this?
little,
Yeah.
little square,
What is
basically.
the intended use for that? Because I don't see anything in the concept plan or
I don't
anything.
know that there is at this point an intended use for that property. It's kind of to be determined. Obviously, if you approve this conditional use, then multifamily would be available to go into that area, but I don't know that that is the plan at this time, or that there really is any plan in place at this time for that parcel.
We're having a night of multifamily here. Has there been any data provided by the school board on zoning for this? Because obviously Tahokwa is a huge development that is going in. It's not done. There's still hundreds of houses going in. Then we're adding 300 and something units here. There has to be some kind of impact on those schools. Do we have numbers?
So the school concurrency plan that comes from the school district is part of the site development. It's not part of this application. And so the school district would provide that as part of the site development plan. And that will be made available. But so that you know, there are schools that are planned within the community of Kindred and Tahokwa. So schools are actually being built within those communities as well. So that is going to offset a lot of the development that is happening in those two neighborhoods specifically.
But if they build a school in Kindred, that's not walkable anymore.
No, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to say is the children who are maybe now going to Neptune that live in Kindred will no longer have to go to Neptune because they can go to school in Kindred, and then these students would be able to use the seats at Neptune.
So we're kind of looking, like you said, it's the same idea, where we're looking at conditional use for this piece of property. It does look like this one's 4 stories.
I believe so,
recommended?
yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Proposed, yes.
Four stories
proposed 4 stories.
are allowed in this zoning. It's not part of the Narcousie overlay that we talked about earlier.
Okay, and rental, these are apartments or condos?
It would be market rate, or market rate, rental rates that'll be set by the market. So, and just to give you an idea, I'm not sure if you've been in that area recently, but it's more or less catty corner to an apartment complex already. It's kind of tucked back there, so it's not easily seen from either road, but it is back there. And then there are townhomes as well, just to the west of the property.
I deliver Meals on Wheels on there, so I definitely know it.
Oh, okay. So you are very familiar with the
I'm
area.
very familiar with it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm
Are there any more questions?
not for me.
Not at this time. Thank you. At this time, we would like to allow for public comment on this resolution. And I do have somebody that entered their name to make comment. Edward Wilson, is that correct? Are they still here?
No, I think he left.
Oh, okay. All right, so Edward is no longer here. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak or address the commission? Okay, thank you. At this time, we will close the public comment session and allow for further discussion
Do we have
with the commission.
Do you have commissions? Do you have conditions here that I'm not too?
I did not see any conditions for this one.
There are no conditions
No?
on the.
Okay. That's why I can't find it.
I will say my only concern with this one is the entrance exit off of Neptune Road. However, it's difficult to really understand that without knowing what the planned expansion is of Neptune Road.
Joshua DeVries, zoning manager. Just a little bit of background. I have been here about 2.5 months now. Previously, I worked at Osceola County Transportation and Transit. Neptune was my project.
Welcome to St. Cloud.
Thank you. So they're between 90% and 100% design plans, and they're working on right-of-way. Once the roadway is under construction, and even now that they're at almost complete design, the county, or the city and the county will coordinate through the site development process as far as layout. And as was mentioned, with the traffic impact analysis, that would be analyzed to look at where the best options for whether it's a right in, right out, or full access. and how to coordinate with that intersection and the turning movements at Sergeant Graham and Neptune as well. So I hope that answers
Now,
your
correct me if I'm wrong, but those really are the only options, right? I mean, for access into the property, I mean, it looks like it's surrounded by other properties with things that are built on them, so I think these are really the only options for,
Yeah. public.
Correct.
In and out.
There's no option to the north of the property or to the east of the property.
Because that's the Publix Plaza.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the Walgreens is just in front of it as well. So, and then the police department to the east.
Oh, you can just go through there.
I don't think that the police department would like that very much.
I mean, just a comment, that light on Sergeant Graham has been needed for 2 or 3 years now. I don't know, adding
I
this
agree
in
with
is
that,
going,
yeah.
that light is going to help alleviate any of this extra traffic. And then, I mean, Neptune backs up way past Kindred at 5 o'clock at night. It's just, it's adding a lot of extra traffic coming in and out of St. Cloud on Neptune.
But the light will at least be safe, make it safe for people.
And yeah, it's needed.
So the other thing I would like to point out is this, they don't ever have to get on Neptune Road either to leave the property if there is access directly onto Sergeant Graham. Unless they choose to get onto Neptune Road, they have immediate access to 192, also with a light onto 192. So there are several options for people to leave the property.
Right. But that intersection is no fun either.
No,
When
I understand.
And I
yes.
realize, I mean, come on, folks, St. Cloud's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing a lot, and there's a need for housing. I mean, so that's why it's in good conscience, that's what
I think that's
we
that's
need.
one of the huge struggles that we have, is that we know there's a need for multifamily housing. However, most cases, when they're presented, it's not a good location.
And there's no traffic study at this point, which makes it harder for us to kind of visualize it.
Just for additional clarification, if you weren't aware, the Neptune Road project, that is widening from the 2 to 4 lanes.
Okay.
And the access that they're proposing off of Sergeant Graham is full access, so people would be able to take, at least proposed anyways. As you mentioned, it would need to go through the traffic impact analysis, but as proposed, it's a full access, so residents could take a left or a right out of there. If that helps provide additional information.
The only thing about your statement is that it doesn't seem to be the right place. Apartments need to be where people have walking access to things. So I don't know if I could agree with that. They're not the good locations or the good spots.
No, I'm saying previous ones.
Oh, all right.
I'm saying that I believe that these two that we've seen this evening are more aligned with where they should be in locations that are more walkable, closer to the main, arterial road,
Okay.
and, not nestled in, in the middle of low-density residential or something like that.
Gotcha.
And also, we are just, at this time, approving a conditional use to allow for this type of building to occur. We're not, approving a site plan or anything like that. This time.
Correct.
Just a recommendation.
Okay.
All right, so if we have no other discussion, I would like to call for a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of resolution number 2022-196R based on the 6 factual matters within the Land Development Code.
Second.
Okay, now that we have a second, does anybody have any other discussion or anything else before we vote? All right, I call for a vote. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Hi.
And it seems we have none opposed.
Passes 4-0, yes, sir.
Thank you. Do we have any other business at this time to discuss?
I think probably just the way the agenda is structured, you should call the remaining 2 items simply to
Right.
address the request for the continuance that was presented by staff and all.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we have 2 other items that are
on the agenda.
Yeah, two other items on the agenda. The first one being case number CPA 22-00004, comprehensive plan amendment. And the request is to continue the petition for a comprehensive plan amendment for case number CPA 22-00004 pursuant to the applicant's request. And this is the one that we saw a few meetings ago. Ordinance number 2022-49, assigning a future land use designation of industrial to approximately 12.313 acres as identified as 5700 Nova Road, located east of Nova Road, west of Pine Grove Road, and north of Hunters Ridge Boulevard. And the staff has reviewed this request with no objections to the continuance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just need to call for a motion on it.
All right, so we'll call for a motion at this time.
Am I moving that we accept the continuance?
Yeah. to move
Yes.
to continue.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second. So we'll call for a vote. All in favor of the
Aye.
continuance? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who
I didn't-
seconded that?
who seconded?
Who
Oh,
seconded
I'll
the motion?
second it.
Ms. Wolford, seconded? Okay. So it's matter was continued. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And then the second one we have is case number ZMA 22-00003, zoning map amendment. And the request is to continue the petition for zoning map amendment for case number ZMA 22-00003. And this is ordinance number 2022-50, providing for the zoning amendment of the zoning map of land development code of the city of St. Cloud, specifically changing the zoning designation of approximately 12.313 acres as identified as 5700 Nova Road from AC Agricultural Development and Conservation to I2 Industrial 2 City zoning designation. And staff has reviewed and has no objections to the continuance of this case.
Correct.
So, do we have a motion?
I move that we allow the continuance.
We have a
Second.
All right, we have a second. This time, we will vote. All in favor of the continuance?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have 4-0.
Okay. And our next meeting, you want to announce that?
Oh, yes, and our next planning commission meeting will be September 20th, 2022 at 6 PM.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
Thank
Good. Well, thank you all. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.